Hey all, welcome to Parker's Reefs. On today's episode, we're going to give this, the Dream Reef tank, its weekly cleanup. Alright, thank you for joining me on yet another episode of Parker's Reefs, and as touched on in the intro, today we are going to give the Dream Reef tank its weekly cleanup because tonight I am on a live stream with a group over in the UK, Reef EAF on Discord. They're invited me on for a tank tour / sort of interview live tonight, and my tank's not looking its best right now. All the glass is dirty, the sand has moved around, there's some skeletons and things in there, and I want to give this tank a quick overhaul. I don't want to give like its 1 year sort of massive maintenance overhaul, but there's some things I want to do to make this tank look as good as it possibly can tonight on that live stream, and I want to take you through step by step what I go through. So before we jump into those actual tasks, I thought I would list them out entirely for you here. So if you want to, you can skip to the different sections in this video to have a look at how I go into those in depth. Now, first and foremost, and this one is a little bit of a contentious thing because some people don't like to clean their back wall, but personally, I love a clean back wall on a reef tank, particularly when it's black, because I feel like it makes all of the colors in front of that back wall, i.e. all of your corals and fish, really pop. So I'm going to get in there with my continuum blades and give that back wall a nice scrape, at least the top section of it where you can see the camera for this live stream is going to be set up just over there, and I want to make sure that the corals here look as bright as they possibly can. Next up, we're going to go from the top down and have a look through this tank and see if there's anything in there that I really need to tidy up. I can see I've got a skeleton of a coral there. I've got a skeleton of a hammer down here that's been eaten for weeks, if not months now. I've got a little bit of debris, some dead snails and things on the sand. And of course, the sand itself has moved around. I want to get that back into position and give it a little bit of a tidy up. So I'll go over how we go about that and how you can get the best angle to view all of these things from the front and from the top of your tank. All right, next up, we're going to move down below the tank and have a look in the sump and cabinet area. I want to make sure that looks as tidy as it can. I'm not going to give it a huge overhaul or anything like that, but there are a couple of things I need to do around dosing containers, a little bit of a tidy up of general knickknacks down there, and I also want to swap out my filter roller to make sure that some of the other steps we do have the tank looking as clear as I can for that video. Next up is the obvious step, the glass itself on the display tank. I will make sure we clean the inside and also the outside of the glass, and I'll take you through some of the tips that I follow to get that looking as good as we can. My second last little trick is a Course of Life source. It's actually a mud, I believe, from Fiji that we put into the reef tank. Makes it go horribly cloudy for a few hours, but by the time tonight comes around, it'll have that water looking crystal clear and all of the corals nice and fat and plump. And then last but absolutely not least is setting up the camera on my laptop to showcase the tank as good as it possibly can. There's no use putting all of this work in to make the tank look as nice as we can if then when I open up the laptop later tonight and I jump on this live stream and all the people can see is just this blue glow. I'll take you through some tricks and some steps there to get that picture looking as good as we possibly can. So without any further ado, I might open up this hood, lift the light frame up, get the nets off this tank and start scraping that back wall. All right, I've now got everything ready so I can get in there and do that shoulder breaking work. I do have my 3 different sized continuum scrapers here. I do actually have a 4th as well that I keep down at the sump, which is basically just the blade part here. It's a little handheld one, but I've got my 3 different lengths here with the arms to give me the best access I can to clean along the top of that back wall there. Like I touched on before, I'm not too fussed about getting every square inch of the back wall. I just want to make sure at least the top third of that back wall is clean, and also another one of my bugbears is the weir. I like to try and make sure that's as clean as possible. So with the help of a chair, these 3 scrapers, and a brand new blade from Continuum, should I need it, I should be able to get that back wall spotless. I'll bring the camera in so I can show you exactly what I'm looking for. All right, so now you can see down this side of the back wall there, which is where it really showcases probably where it's a bit dirtier than the front. You can also sort of see, I'm not sure if you can, sort of from about there downwards, kind of behind this pump here is where it gets a little bit dirtier. I'm not too fussed about that because realistically, this is about the only angle you can see that. And well, thanks to these pumps, you can't even really see that. From a little gap through there that you can see is a little bit dirty, but again, very, very hard to see that. It's all this section across the top here about weir height that I want to clean up so that we get that dramatic black contrast. So I've got my continuum blade that I was using basically as a pointer there, and I'm just going to go in and give that a good scrape, keeping in mind that I don't run into any pumps there. Push the snails out of the way, which my sand perch will really like. And I do find if you're not getting as much removal from your back wall as possible, that it could well be that your blade is a little long in the tooth and needs to be replaced. These blades cop a fair old hard time. They get pushed into things they shouldn't, they bend up, they suffer all sorts of consequences, a lot more bad exposure than say the blade on your magnet cleaner, which we'll get to later. So I do find I go through these blades a little bit quicker. Thankfully, Continuum released them in a 2 and a 3 pack, which does make it super easy to stay on top of them. But hopefully you can see there on camera, this part of the back wall is coming up pretty good. If you get in at the right angle, you can actually see different sections that are got some algae that's not coralline algae. It's not purple, it's not bright, it doesn't stand out obvious, but it does just make this back wall sort of a dark brown rather than a shiny black. That shiny black is what I'm looking for. That's what's going to give us the contrast. So I'm going to keep working away with my different length arms to get that as clean as I can. Just going to show you a quick time lapse of me cleaning the back wall here, because this takes a little while, and I got to tell you, it is hard work. I can completely understand why a lot of people do not like to clean their back wall, but I do have to admit the results are absolutely worth it. And doing around those weir combs there is absolutely the hardest part, but gives the best results overall. All right, now that the back wall has been taken care of, it's time to move our focus to inside the glass box itself, what many people would think is the most important part of today's cleanup. And I wouldn't say they're wrong. There are a number of things I want to tackle in here. Going through some of those things, I want to remove some dead skeletons like this hammer that my angel's been munching away on, a little SBS frag that got shaded there. I want to move some of the corals that have repositioned themselves on the sand, and some of them have even fallen off their perch. I want to take them out, maybe make some frags as I go, and I do have the flipper magnetic frag rack here to help me do that. The beauty of this item here is it actually has a little utility shelf that sits on the outside, which makes it super, super handy when you are working from the top down in your tank, pulling bits and pieces out. You need somewhere to sit them. I hate sitting things on the brace of my tank because I always end up drooping water down the front, or they get fallen back in or something like that. With this utility shelf, I can sit them on that and deal with them a little bit later. So that's super, super handy. We'll go over that. I also want to go through and have a look if there's any super obvious aptasias. If there is, I'll grab the ITC UVC torch. That's quite a mouthful. Just hit them up while I'm there. I do recognize it takes multiple applications with this torch to kill them off, but if it can shrink them and get them at least a part of the way to that destruction for tonight's video, it's going to look a lot better than a dirty big aptasia sitting there. So I'll keep my torch handy. Once I've done a little bit of fragging, a little bit of coral moving, getting that sand back in position where it has just exposed the glass base here, pulling out some dead snail shells, things like that, particularly from the front of the tank. I've got 100 or 1,000 of them at the back of the tank, but not too fussed on that today. That's one of those deep clean problems, but some of these empty shells on the front here can absolutely be moved out. What I want to move my attention to after that is actually continuing my resuscitation of this red goniopora here that my clownfish did actually just host a little bit too hard, and it really did affect that goni. So over the last week or two, I've actually been feeding the Triton N-Fuse range. Well, I say I've been feeding the Triton N-Fuse range. I've been using the Triton N-Fuse range to feed that goniopora. We'll go over how we use that a little bit later. Super, super cool and pretty unique product. And I think at that stage, the glass box itself will be looking pretty good. But, well, at least inside the glass box. We can then have a look at outside the glass box where we've got water stains here. And obviously the glass itself is pretty dirty as well. But let's focus what's inside the glass box first, and then we'll jump on to task number 3 from there. Alright, so I'm going to jump in by using the tongs to grab out those skeletons of dead corals and also the empty snail shells. Then I'm going to grab my scraper blade here to just gently move the sand to cover those bare spots on the bottom of the tank. I want to take as little amount of sand as possible because you can see how much of a cloud is released every time I move a bit. Normally I leave that to my snails, but today I just want to cover up those bald patches on the glass. Alright, I'm getting to the part now where I want to actually look down in the tank from the top to see things that I can't otherwise see from the front. Or it can also just be when you want to try and cut a bit of a frag of a coral where it's not immediately obvious at the front of the tank. I always like to try and cut my frags from sort of the back of the growth so it's not this big white open bit of skeleton there, which particularly when I've got a live stream tonight, I don't really want that visible. And that's where the flipper top-down viewer comes into play. This lets you sit that on the surface of your water and you can look through it to see what's going on. You get a much, much better view than just trying to look through the water surface as it is. And it also has this little removable orange filter that you can sit inside there, which lets you put your phone on there and get some really cool footage without that real blue look. But to be fair, I like just using it as a top-down viewer to see what I'm working on, get things like my UVC torch in there and really get working away on things. One little feature I do love about this top-down is it has these little rubber dots on there. So when you're not sitting it in your tank and you're just sitting it on your table, this surface does not get scratched because I've used top-down viewers before where they don't have these little rubber stoppers and this ends up getting pretty scratched and it gets pretty hard to see what you're looking at. So Flipper have done well there. One other thing I will also use, and I did touch on it, is my frag rack from Flipper that has the utility shelf that we can sit outside the tank here. So I can sit things like my cutters on here rather than sitting them up here waiting to get knocked into the tank and cause all sorts of devastation. So with these two tools in mind, I'm going to get to work, go through the tank from the top down. I'll bring you in for a bit of close-up footage so you can see what I'm targeting, particularly around some fragging and some aptasia control, and we'll go from there. Alright, so first things first, I'm going to put my Flipper magnetic frag rack in. Not so much for the frag rack at this point in time, but more so because I want the utility shelf outside the tank. And it quite simply has these little slots here that just slide over the magnets and gives you somewhere to sit your things there. Now don't get me wrong, you don't want to sit a bucket of salt on there. It does just sit on those magnets. And this is a 19 mil thick glass when this is really only rated to 10 mil. But to sit things like the UVC test card, beautiful. Sit it on there rather than sitting it on the brace of your tank and then knocking it into the tank. Makes life much, much easier. Switching across to that Flipper top-down view, and I've just got my phone sitting in it here. Check out the view you get, incredible, without any sort of adjustments or anything at all. Obviously I've got all my wave makers on, so you can get a little bit seasick watching this footage, but it gives you a completely different view of your own tank, which is exactly what we want. It gives you the ability to float over the top of this gigantic Dustin's cousin colony here, past the red dragon there, which is just struggling to focus because we're that close to it. And you can start to really see all sorts of different angles of your tank that you just otherwise can't from the top. I can see a huge amount of cyano in around that cherry bomb there. I want to get in there and give that a good clean out. So this is the time when I'd probably grab my turkey baster, or I'd grab the flow pump and we just give that a little bit of a blowout there just to see if we can't get that off that coral, stop it smothering it, and hopefully save it before it's too late. But we'll continue the tour on, and a simple little thing like this top down with the orange filter that you can see through there just gives you such an impeccable view of the tank that is otherwise so hard to do. If I take the phone out and just show you what it looks like without the top down, it's night and day. You just cannot see anything. Alright, now next up I want to mix up some food for this Goniopora that has been struggling thanks to my clownfish that decided he'd really like to get aggressively in there and host it. You can see the coral itself is still perfectly fine, but it has been retracted now for probably about 2 weeks. Extends a little bit now and then, but that's about as far as it goes. So I have just started a little treatment thanks to a new product from Triton to see if I can't get some nutrition into this goni and get him extending back out fully like he was before. You can see through the dirty glass, mind you, the radius that Goniopora used to extend before, and I want to get it back to its former best. So with that in mind, let's go through this new product from Triton. All right, so speaking of said product from Triton, it is this N-Fuse range. Now, you could be confused into thinking that it is a coral food when my understanding is that it is not a coral food. It's actually, as the label says, a nutrient carrier system. It actually converts your food into a substance or into a consistency, I guess, that your corals are more likely to take up. That's how I understand it. I'm sure the guys from Triton might actually tell me otherwise, but essentially there are two parts. You have part one that you put into some RODI water that I've got here, and I'm going to do that right now. You get 10 milliliters of part one. Add that into about 150 ml of RODI water. Then set that aside. We'll come to part two at the end. What we're actually going to do now is add in all of the foods, vitamins, aminos, everything that we want to add into that Goniopora. So I'm going to start off with a bit of Aquaforest Plankton Elixir. Squirt a bit of that in there. I'm happy to give all the corals a bit of a feed while I'm there. Going to tip a little bit of the Reef Revolution polyp coral food here. This is one of the many sort of reef roid versions of food that are out there on the market. Set that one aside and give that a little stir in there just to make sure it's all setting in the water. Then I'm going to add some drops of Coral Essentials, Amino, Grow, and lastly a little bit of their Vibrance. I would also add some Chroma if I had it, but I have run out. I'm almost out of Vibrance too by the look. Next up is the Grow. Now, I will point out that I rarely ever feed my corals. I've got enough of a bio load with my fish to take care of that for me. However, it is handy to have these products on hand for when a situation like what's going on with this Goni comes up. And I want to jump in and give it as much of a helping hand as I can. All right, I've got my solution in here with N-Fuse component 1, all of my coral foods, my RODI water. The next step is to add in component 2. And you'll see when you add this, it actually starts to crystallize a little bit in there. It kind of combines all of these foods together. So let's do that now. Again, 10 milliliters of this one. See that formation down there? It almost goes solid before your eyes. It's pretty cool. Stir that in and you can see that whole solution goes pretty white. It's still absolutely a liquid. And I know the guys up at Triton have been doing some ICP testing of corals from the reef out at the Great Barrier Reef there at different stages of feeding, and they believe they've unlocked a bit of a secret. So I'm curious to try this product and see if I can get all of these vitamins, aminos, foods, various items into that Goni and get it recovering ASAP. I'll grab the coral feeder and we'll do that now. All right, I've got a decent amount of my flow turned off, just so that the coral food doesn't get blown away completely. I'm just going to gently spray that over the Goni. Obviously I will do some other corals while I've got this solution mixed up, but my primary purpose here is to get some nutrition into this Goni, get it extending again, kind of train it to open back up after what the clownfish did to it. Grab another big squeeze of that turkey baster. See, it does generally create a little bit of a feeding frenzy from the fish as well, obviously because there's food going into the system. If I wanted to be much more efficient with this, I could absolutely turn the return pumps off, turn all flow off, and it would make the water completely stagnant, give the corals the maximum opportunity to access this food. However, I'm not that concerned. I just want to train that Goniopora to open up and get some food again. I'll give that a minute and see how it reacts. Now, I will confess to the eye, I didn't think the Goni had a reaction at all. However, now looking at this time-lapse footage, I can see that it does actually send polyps out, grab a bit of food, and then pull back in. Not a huge reaction just yet, but promising signs for a Goni that is in recovery. Now that the flow is back on, it's probably ironic that the coral that I gave the most attention to, the Goniopora there, had very little response, although I will say you can actually see the polyps grabbing some food and taking it in. But some other corals went berserk during the feeding, including, it's hard to see, but I've got a bubble coral in behind there, and it sent its feeders well and truly out. the Recordia, the Rhodactis, these hammers all fluffed right up. And of course, the goni that the clown in question has moved across to after destroying this one over here. Well, I say destroy, he's temporarily upset it. He's now moved across to this one. This goni also enjoyed the feed, and hopefully that feed in there will just give it a little bit more resistance against that guy there, smushing his head right in there like he is now. So it's one of those things, I just had the time lapse on the wrong spot, but hopefully over a few treatments I can get a little bit of nutrition into this goni and we'll see it start to respond and get some polyp extension back again. Like I said, you can actually see the polyps there grabbing a little bit of food, and that's got to be a good thing at the end of the day. All right, one of the biggest tips that I learned in 2024 from seeing a heap of incredible reef tanks out there was the importance to blow the detritus off your rocks and some of the larger corals in your tank. Now, as you can see, I do have quite a few large corals in the tank, and as we saw with the top-down viewer before, there is a bit of cyano and some other detritus trapped in there. So to tackle that, I was using a turkey baster, but I found it just wasn't strong enough. I've moved on to an old Tunzi pump, and I gotta say, this thing is an absolute beast. Flows a heap of water. So when I get up on the stand, I'm gonna get my assistant to plug it in for me, because this thing is like an outboard motor, and if I have to plug it in and run over here, it creates all sorts of trouble. So let me get up into position, hold that in the water, and I'll get my assistant to plug it in, and we're off and running. This is one of those tasks I like to take your time with and just see how much force your corals can take. I do also like to bring the pump up near the surface, like you can see here, to get a little bit of micro bubbling on them as well and generate a little bit of coral slime. Now hopefully you can see all of the micro bubbles, all of the slime coming off the coral. You might even see bits of cyanobacteria floating around. There's definitely a lot of detritus in the water, and this is the sort of clean that, like I said, I picked up on the good reef tanks that I saw throughout all of 2024 was something that they all did. So it is definitely something I have incorporated into my weekly routine. It's not that difficult to do, gives pretty cool looking results, and I think it's absolutely worthwhile. Just before we jump onto the next task, I wanted to bring you in and give you a close-up look at this Dustin's cousin blue stag here sliming up after that microbubble treatment. To me, this has got to be a good sign, so I'm happy to do this every week or two. All right, the last thing I want to do inside the glass box itself, before cleaning the glass itself, is to run an Aquaforest life source treatment. Now this, like I touched on before, is a mud. I do highly recommend only using a little bit of it, particularly if you want your tank to clear up that day. If you go and use a heap of this, your tank's going to be cloudy for 24 hours. I recommend using a very small amount. It just is all it needs. It gives a little bit of bacterial diversity, well I believe it does, and it seems to just give the corals a bit of oomph as well as giving your water a good clarify at the same time. So a little bit more often is much better than a heap every now and then. I like to use about 2/3 of the size of the spoon that it comes with for my tank, and my tank's about 1400 litres. Now, I'll bring the camera in so you can have a look, but all I've got here is a cup of, well I say a cup, a jug of tank water. I'll use the spoon that comes with this, put some in, I'll stir it up, and then I just dump it in the tank with all of the wave makers on, dispersing that throughout the whole water. The tank will go cloudy, but trust me, it will clear up. All right, so these new packets of Life Source do come with a little spoon in here, and it does say that that's 1.25 millilitres to a line in there, which is an awkward way of measuring mud, I will admit. I'll make sure I've got a towel on hand because I don't want to get muddy water on our dining table, but I do want to get some of this mud here, and just a bit of it, like I said, not a heap, into that water there. I'll now close this bag up because it is kind of awkward in these little tubs, but it does work fairly well. You will notice the mud is wet and there will be water in there. Completely normal, completely expected. I better put the spoon back in there so I don't lose it, which does just kind of awkwardly poke in there. Now I'm going to grab my turkey baster here and just mix that all up. You can just leave this for a fair while if you want. If you want to let that sit for an hour or so, give it a stir every now and then. It will mix in fairly well, but I've got a live stream to film, so I'm going to mix this in pretty quickly. And then I'm going to get back up on my stand, pour that into the tank, and like I said, the water will go cloudy. All right, here it is all mixed up, ready to pour in the tank. All right, so as you can see, that was a nice light dose of the life source because I do want this tank to clear up in the next few hours. Typically, you'd probably see about 3 to 4 times that level of cloudiness, but I did go for a nice small amount, which should still do the job nicely. Get that nice flocculant in the water, get a nice little bacterial diversity going in there, and I think also give a little bit of nutrition to some of the corals as well. Now, while we wait for that to settle, I might actually skip the step of cleaning the glass now. We'll leave that till almost last. I want to jump downstairs into the cabinet and make sure everything down there is ready to go for tonight's live stream. All right, so down in the cabinet, thankfully things aren't too bad. There's a couple of things I probably will target though. Firstly, I want to tidy up this section here. It has become a little bit of a temporary storage area, and I've got things like my salinity tester there, some food. There is the Triton Core 7 Flex there that I'll need to mix up a little bit more and fill up my dosing containers here. Kalkwasser looks fine, calcium reactor's fine. My filter roller is pretty well due to expire. The roller is just about empty, so I will actually grab the spare roll that I have here. I'm actually trying out the Bubble Magus rolls at the moment. They fit my Himali reactor quite well and they're easily accessible from my local fish store. So I'll try out one of those in there. Skimmer section all looks fine. I do need to mix up a little bit more reagent for my Aquatronic Pro. It's almost out, so I want to make sure that's nice and full. Other than that, I'll give it a little bit of a clean up just to wipe down. It should be good to go. I think we can probably move back on to finishing off cleaning up the glass. Okay, so after clearing out that section to the right, I'm going to jump onto replacing the filter roller. With a Himali, it's not too bad. Just undo those screws, pop the roll off, empty it out, pop the new roll on, and then you watch me struggle feed it through the rollers a little bit. But no, I'm joking. It wasn't too hard, but probably took me a little bit longer than usual, of course, because the camera is rolling. Once I finally free that through, I attach it onto the motor side, roll it through, and then put the side plate on, and consider that roll change for the next few months. Then I'll jump across to the Aquatronic Pro, replace that reagent there, give the top of the sump there a little bit of a wipe up, and Bob's your uncle. All right, now that we've got everything down in the cabinet looking hunky-dory, it's good to move on to, well, our final 3 steps really. We've got inside the glass, outside the glass, and then of course we've got to set up the webcam for the best view possible. Now, I've been a long-term fan of flippers. They work very, very well for me. They're accessible at my local fish shop. And very, very importantly, I can also get hold of replacement blades. If you are not replacing the blades on your magnetic cleaner every 4 to 6 months, please consider doing so. They normally come in a 2-pack like this. If you include the blades you get with it, plus a 2-pack here, you're gonna get 12 to 18 months out of blades, which is a pretty good time frame. Especially if you're lazy like me and you leave your magnetic cleaner in the tank. I know they recommend you take them out, and by all means you probably should, but I tend to run into trouble with big strong magnets, kids going about the house, pets, things like that. So for me it's much more convenient to leave it in the tank. So every now and then I do like to take it out of the tank, give it a clean, and put a new blade on it. We're going to do that today before I clean the glass, because the last thing I want to do is scratch the glass. We'll get this Max Flipper float out, take it over to the sink, give it a little bit of a clean up, put a new blade on it, then we'll go about cleaning the inside of our glass. All right, so I'm not quite sure how well it shows up on camera there, but the wet side of my flipper is pretty dirty, including a decent array of bubble algae on here. A few of these sort of calcium buildup things on there, a little bit of coralline algae and things there. All in all, it's not too bad. And whilst the blade doesn't look bad, apart from some coralline algae growing on there, I definitely do want to replace that. So what I might do is just grab a little spoon and I'll pop that off. I find using a teaspoon makes this really easy. Just like that, blade cleaner's off. Now I'm going to grab my little scrubber brush, put some cold water on the tap here, and clean this bubble algae off, because nobody wants that growing on their magnet cleaner. All right, I think that's pretty good. While it's not spotless, all I'm after is a quick cleanup while I've got it out to replace the blade. Got all the bubble algae off there, some of the coralline algae and things. Probably needs citric acid scrub to get that off, but again, this is a quick cleanup for tonight's video. I think we're good to put the new blade on. Now the new blades for these are super, super simple. They have a little locking tab that you saw me use the teaspoon to get them off. You slide them in, they lock on there, you're good to go. Just like that, you hear that click?
can't lift it off. It's got a brand new blade, ready to clean your tank. Definitely not scratch it. All right, now that we've got our new blade on and we've given the wet side of the magnet cleaner a quick clean up, we're good to put this back in. My dry side is nice and clean, but it is always worth making sure when you've got that off, just to make sure there's no sort of salt creep or anything on there. You don't want anything hard on this side scratching the outside of your glass. So make sure that's clean. It is in this instance, so I'm going to jump up on my stepladder here and put the wet side in, bring the dry side towards it. You don't want to just go clang like that, that'll bend the blade out. Slowly slide them in together. So there's my wet side there. Here's my dry side. I've got them well far apart. Bring them in. You might have to twist them around to get them to align. That's got it connected without giving that big clang that we had before. Now you may notice I've got a little bit of water down here that I'm about to go over. I'm not too concerned about that because we are going to clean the outside of the glass in a minute.
Now, as I bring the camera in for a close-up here, I've got to say a new blade on your flipper is almost as good as a new pair of jocks because it just cuts through that algae so nicely, makes it much quicker to clean your glass. You can get it all in one pass. If you ever find yourself having to go over the same piece of glass more than once, you either don't have a strong enough magnet cleaner or your blade is tired. You can see me quickly doing the rest of the glass here. It comes up a treat very quickly.
All right, I might be getting a little bit hot and a little bit sweaty and maybe a touch tired, but the finish line is in sight. Our tank water has started to clear up. I've got all of the stuff off the base of the sand and moved the sand around where I wanted to. I've got the cabinet under control, and now I've cleaned inside the glass. I just need to clean outside the glass and set up the web camera. Now, not very often will I clean the outside of my glass, I will admit. I'm pretty good at keeping this water inside the tank because I do have a good size Euro brace. But when I've done things like I have today, pulled skeletons, snail shells, I've done a bit of fragging, I've scraped the back wall, all these sort of tasks, you do end up with a bit of water spilling over the edge and it leaves these horrible water stains. And that is where I absolutely love these flipper mitts. You get 2 of them in a packet, which lasts a very long time. I've got a brand new packet there, but I'm still using the second one I bought maybe 2 years ago. So I'm good for now. And I do like to use just a little bit of water. You can use RODI if you want, or just tap water is fine. Obviously you don't spray it straight into your tank, just spray it on the glass and use it very sparingly. You don't need much. The flipper mitt does have 2 sides to it. This side's good for that first wipe with the water. Once you get most of the water off, switch over to this side, which polishes it off really nicely. I'll give a quick demonstration of that now. Sure if you can even see the amount of water on there. I don't like to put a lot on, you don't need a lot. Get the blue side, work that in. Focusing wherever you can see those watermarks. I had quite a few around there. Now don't panic if it does leave a little bit of a haze at this stage. That's what the white side of the mitt is for. This side's really just to lift up those water stains. The white side will really polish it off. Now, one tip I will like to give, make sure you open up your cabinet doors. I always find I've got some water stains down along there. And when you are at the final stage of polishing, I always recommend kneeling down and looking up at the glass. You see so many more stains than you did before that way. Always recommend. Bear with me, I'll finish off cleaning out the outside of this glass.
Now, I bet watching someone clean the aquarium glass was not on your bingo card for today, but you can see the process is super simple thanks to the flipper mitt.
All right, the finish line is in sight. There's one final step, and that is where I want to use the flip kick from Flipper. Now, this is primarily designed as a filter to go onto your smartphone, because if you've ever tried to take pictures or videos of your tank before without a filter, you know that it just turns into Smurf land. Now, I want to make sure that I don't replicate that exact problem on my webcam when I do this live stream later today. And that's exactly where this flip kick comes into play, because it actually is a magnetic filter that comes with a number of mounts. So I can have one on my phone that I can magnetically attach this filter to, but I can also set one of those magnetic attachments up on my laptop, which will allow me to attach this filter and flip it over the webcam so that I get exactly the same sort of view that I do through my smartphone that I do when I'm looking at the tank with a filter on it. Let's set that up now.
All right, so here we are with the webcam running, and I gotta say the picture quality actually isn't too bad by default, but I am mindful that I am probably going to adjust my lights to really try and get the corals popping a little bit later. And that's where I plan on using the flipper flip kick here to make the picture look a little bit more like the filtered view that we had on the smartphone. So you get this little carabiner pouch that you can carry the lens about in. And once you open it up, you'll see that you actually get two lenses on there. You've got an orange and a yellow. You can run either or both, whatever you like. Typically, I find just one lens enough, but we'll see how we go. And you also get these adhesive magnetic mounts, which allow you to put that on your phone, the back of your phone, or on the laptop, and then you can just use the magnet on this side of the lens and it'll actually lock onto it like that, so it'll hold it into place. I'm actually tempted to, on the laptop here, seeing the webcams just at the top of the screen there, just sit it over the top like that and see how it goes. So without any other adjustments, let me sit this over there. Look, it probably needs some adjustment. That's still pretty hazy, but it does show that it brings the colors out a little bit more. I might try the yellow filter. And I should show on screen that I literally just unscrew one, put the next one on. We'll sit this one over the top of the webcam, see how that looks. Oh, that looks much better. I think I've found the filter I'm going to use for tonight's live stream. That yellow one on the webcam really makes the corals look good, and that's before I've turned the blues up a little bit just to get the corals popping a bit more. Easy as that.
All right, guys, there you have it. That was the weekly maintenance. Although, to be fair, it's not like I do this every week, but it's what I did do this week in preparation for this Reefy AF live stream on Discord tonight. I've got the tank looking pretty good, I will say. Both inside, outside, and even beneath the tank is looking mighty fine and should look a treat on this live stream tonight. So I'm very much looking forward to that. I do want to give a massive shout out to all of my channel members. Their names are on screen here now. These guys chip in a couple of dollars each and every month to make videos like this possible, and it goes a huge, huge way. So you get my absolute gratitude for making that happen. And for everyone else out there, if you can't spare a couple of dollars a month, totally understand. If you can spare 2 seconds of your time and not a single cent at all by clicking that subscribe button in the bottom corner, that helps our number grow to 36, 37, up to 40, 50,000 subscribers. And it helps tell YouTube to push this video out to more reefers out there, because obviously it's good content if we have that many subscribers. Well, that's what I think anyway. See if you can tell me otherwise. Now, I will wrap things up there, but as always, if you do have any questions, comments, feedback, anything about any of the products I covered today, any of the techniques I covered today, or anything in general, feel free to pop it in the comment section below, because I do personally reply to each and every comment there, so it is the best way to get hold of me. But I think other than that, I need to go have a shower, a shave, maybe get a quick nap in before the time zone in the UK comes in, and I'll set myself up in front of the tank here and do that live stream tonight. Anyway, guys, I will leave you with it. Thank you so much for watching. Till next time, stay safe, keep reefing. Cheers, bye.